Hi there, everybody, and welcome to this Lunch and Learn session organised in collaboration between the Knowledge and Library Services at NCIC and the Cumbria Learning and Improvement Collaborative. Thank you all so much for attending today. We are joined today by Karen Kirk, who is Programme Lead for the Cumbria Learning and Improvement Collaborative, and also Sarah Fowler, who is the Organisational Development and Workforce Team Training Manager for the Cumbria County Council. And this Lunch and Learn session is supporting leaders to navigate new ways of working.
Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. We've got a real good gang of people that have come for this short lunch and learn today, which is brilliant because we're trying to sort of build up a reputation for covering lots of different subject matters, and for you to come along for a short space of time, have a bit of intervention in terms of the presentation, and then hopefully we'll get some questions at the end as well. So yeah, do please tell your friends to look out for the different themes, and we're always looking for people to share learning as well if you want to. So for this one, it's a double act between myself and Sarah at Cumbria County Council, which is great because this is open to everybody in health and care, be it working or volunteering in North and West Cumbria, and obviously we try and make it relevant to that. So coming over to the subject matter for today, and we thought that we'd get, a good response to this because most, if not all of us, have interfaced with, sort of quite drastic in some cases change in working practices. And I suppose I want to say right up front that this isn't just about those that are in office-based type roles, because we are thinking about people who are frontline facing staff as well. Some of the challenges might be trickier, but when we talk about flexible working and sort of creative working practices, we have to really challenge ourselves to think about those of us working in health and care across the board, and what that means. So hopefully you can just see, this is really just I suppose just to highlight that when we're not just talking about hybrid working here, and welcome to anybody that's just joining us a bit late. There are loads of things that come under the sort of terms of flexible working. And we know that people want, even pre-COVID, that people want flexible working. I mean, if you think about the amount of people that we have on agency and bank, for example, even before COVID, we know there's an appetite for people wanting to be able to have more control over what they do and how they do it. And when I was putting this together, it made me think of my son, Thomas, who's only 19. He works in a leisure centre. He doesn't work in health and care, but and he's had a casual contract since he was at college. He's now full time, and the leisure centre are desperate for him to have a permanent contract. He doesn't want one. He wants to stick with his casual contract because some weeks he does ridiculous hours and other weeks he picks and chooses. So even at that age, he's starting to say, well, I want to be able to work flexibly, and that's what we've got coming through. We've got people who are now wanting more choice, and we're against a backdrop at the moment where there is choice. There's a lot of moving and shifting around because of the availability of jobs. This is specific to the NHS, but I'll come on to sort of the wider national picture as well because it's relevant to that. But as the trailblazers for this, it'd be interesting to know if us in the NHS, whether we already knew this, that already things have changed, whether or not we've caught up in North Cumbria with this yet. Be interesting to see. I don't know if we've got anybody from HR here, but so in terms of flexible working requests, already, the unions have agreed that that kind of 6-month requirement in terms of a waiting time before people can request flexible working has been removed. And, obviously you can see the other stuff that goes with it there around people actually don't even need to justify. They can put in a request for flexible working, and we've to look at that. But also look at alternatives as well. So it's not just a question of saying no. And a few weeks ago, a consultation started nationally around this. So in all likelihood, that consultation ends on the 1st of December, but in all likelihood, this will cut across everybody and will come into practice. So we'll watch this space for that. Hopefully you can see, I mean, this is just really to get a bit of a flavour for, we're against a backdrop of people, understanding that actually that, they know their rights, they can, we can actually come forward and say, we want to do something in a different way. I'll just pick out one of those, you may be familiar with because it's quite recent. So where it says mother refused 5 p.m. finish. And that huge payout really. So that was Alice Thompson, who wanted to pick her daughter up from nursery. She's an estate agent, and when she came back off maternity leave. But what's interesting about this case is the court ruled that she'd suffered indirect sex discrimination, but what it hinged on was the failure to consider her request. So it wasn't a question of saying, well, we've considered lots of things but we can't make it work. What they were found lacking in was any kind of process for actually considering that request. They just shut her down every time. So she offered up lots of different ways in which she could work flexibly, to which they just weren't listening, and that's why that court payout was like it was. So and COVID obviously and everything that's been happening there has really started to change the picture. So I just wanted to focus for a few minutes on just getting our heads around actually, so what does flexible working give us, but also what are the challenges with flexible working, and if we had all the time in the world, I'm sure lots of people would have a view on this, but there's a growing body of evidence around the increase in productivity, and that's to do with lots of things, potentially actually a longer working day because people might not be commuting, and more control over time and environment. So, and that's of course not just about people working from home, that's about people who are in frontline facing roles being able to be more flexible with the hours and the work patterns that they have, and can potentially reduce stress and burnout too, again because of that element of being able to be more in control of what they're doing and being able to manage that in terms of their work-life balance. And this thing about better job satisfaction again is linked to people will have their sort of core values and purpose in life around actually I want to be able to balance this with actually what's important to me, and that in turn will allow for people to have more job satisfaction. Really importantly, it's an attractive proposition for people to know that they can request to work in ways that are going to be helpful to them. So in terms of challenges, and I'm sure some of us might have experienced this, I'm lucky at the moment I haven't got a dog jumping up at me and wanting to get involved with the presentation because he's a real show off, is my dog. So but I've locked him away in another room. But what it brings is actually sometimes some tension around actually an expectation if people are working from home, let's say, and being able to manage the workload whilst having a dual role as a parent or a caregiver or whatever, and that can be tricky for managers to manage because you're trusted to work at home, which these two I suppose are part and parcel of the same thing. There's no dividing line between home and work sometimes, and sometimes it can be easier actually to work longer hours if you're working from home. with any type of flexible working, it can be inequitable, and this is, as team leaders, is something for us to really think about. So it could be inequitable in the sense of fairness and people feeling that some people have access to some flexible working rights that other people don't, but it could also be to do with a lack of equipment, or some people don't have workspaces at home, so some people's lifestyles lend themselves better to more flexible working. So there's a lot of things there. Interestingly, I heard the other day that North East Ambulance Service, their staff, their support staff, are now working on a openly flexible basis on their own terms, and they've been given £300 per head towards equipment. So they've given some real clarity there around saying, actually, we want you to work at home, we want you to manage your work, your flexing coming in and out of work, and we're also going to pay to make it clear that we want you to have the right equipment at home. And then we come on to some challenges around actually, when I'm working at home, when I'm not part of a team, I might struggle to actually motivate myself to be able to get on and do the work. There might be distractions and so on. Some people take up an option that's quite common in the NHS in particular. Not sure about the council, Sarah, you could perhaps comment on that. That compressed time can lead sometimes to, although you can be very productive in your own right, it means you could be less available, for example, if you're doing a 4-day week or a 9-day fortnight. And then, of course, there's the physical, emotional and mental impact of that. And I just heard this morning about us keeping close to a study with Sunderland University about the impact of home working and actually how that is impacting on us in terms of our connections, that ability to sort of feel part of a team, and how, and of course, are you eating more if you're at home? Are you doing more or less exercise? All those sorts of things. So quite a bit of food for thought there, and a sort of a context of what's going on from an employment law point of view. What I want to do now is hand over to Sarah Fowler, who's going to talk about what's happening in Cumbria County Council, so right close to home, and some real kind of good work that's gone on over the last sort of year and potentially before COVID, around ways of working for the people that work for the council. So if you want to pick up the slides, Sarah, we'll see if it works.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Yep, I think I've got them. I'll move it forward. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Fowler. I'm the Organisational Development and Workforce Training Team Manager for the County Council. And Karen's asked me to come along today just as a bit of a case study, really, around what we're doing in the council around new ways of working. And as you can see, we've got a real sort of branded approach to our new ways of working. It's actually got its own brand attached to it. And as you can see there, there's a real sort of underlying concept around work is about what you do and not where you do it. And this is really an overhang really from our previous agile working policy, which we're carrying forward into our current situation and new ways of working. So we've got some really sort of key principles that underpin our new ways of working, and that is really sort of around supporting a happy, healthy and productive workforce, delivering the best council services for the people of Cumbria. So there's a real sort of recognition that if people are happy and healthy in work, then they are more engaged and more productive. So this kind of really underpins, our approach to make sure that we're providing the best possible services for the people of Cumbria. So we've taken very much a person-centred approach. Colleagues' work styles have been shaped around their job roles and their personal circumstances. We recognise that one size doesn't fit all. We have a really diverse workforce, from people working in health and social care right through to the fire service. So we knew that there wasn't one approach that could suit every situation. And also that, again, sort of relating to the employee engagement side of things, that actually health, safety and well-being was really central to our approach. So what's happened in the council is they've actually devised 3 work styles based around the work activity that staff get involved with, what the needs were around the interface with the customer, so their organisational need and collaboration, their personal circumstances and also their well-being. So we've got place-based workers. So those workers are those that you would imagine that are in sort of Cumbria care type roles, those that have to be in their workplace to do their job. We've got on-the-go workers, and these workers are those that are more community-based. So, for example, could be social workers or some firefighters, etc. And then we've got anywhere workers, who are more typically your office-based workers who can work from home, from the office, from their partner, partnerships, working in other offices, etc. So much more able to work more agilely. So as you can imagine, we've done a lot of staff engagement over the last 12 months, and what we've found is that what staff wanted was more information around flexible working. So very much around, what Karen's just been talking about, that flexible working and family-friendly policies. They wanted more information about mileage and home working allowances. And they wanted to know when they would be able to come back to the office for those that were more office-based. And also they wanted to know that when they did come back to any work setting, whether they would be safe, PPE and COVID-safe measures in place. And what we've learned so far is that the sort of home life work balance is really important to people. And that's come really through really strongly in the surveys that have taken place. Colleagues really want to have flexibility in the way that they do their work, and colleagues also want to feel empowered, safe and supported. And what we found when we first went into lockdown was that quite a lot of the barriers and the bureaucracy and the procedures kind of fell to the side a little bit, which allowed people to kind of feel more empowered, and that was something that they really didn't want to lose. So we're working on developing some tools to kind of help managers to kind of empower their staff with the work that they're doing. So all of that information, all of that data is collected into a transition plan, and we're at the moment going through various phases of that transition plan, with the initial stage of getting ready. So I would say we're probably just coming out of this stage now, this phase. So in this phase, managers were encouraged to have conversations, and we provided a reconnection guide which has lots of tools and guidance in it around, how to kind of have those conversations with managers, for managers to have conversations with their staff around things like, when is it best to come into the office? When is it best to work virtually? What sort of considerations need to be taken into place around people's health and well-being? How do we make sure that the customer focus is still there? How do we make sure that we cover diversity and inclusion, as well as sort of ICT and digital checklists, health and safety, staff well-being, team development, helping managers to help their staff reconnect back into new ways of working, and managing through change guidance as well, and particularly for us as an organisation just about to go through local government reform as well, that's become really, really important. So all line managers have been asked to have conversations with their individuals in their teams about work styles and what works best for them. Obviously, we've been sort of regularly communicating to the workforce around, sort of following the government guidelines around national restrictions and when they would be lifted, and what that would mean for us as well. So where are we now? I would say we're very much in that phase of returning to the office for the first time. There's a sort of a trickle, I would say, rather than a full rush back to the office. and that obviously we're monitoring that, looking at sort of meeting rooms when they're getting booked, making sure that we've got enough equipment in the offices, because obviously quite a lot of equipment went home with people during the lockdown, and also a review as well of our travel and mileage policy, which is underway at the moment. Okay. I have got a couple of more slides to share, but I don't know if I've got time to share them. I know we're kind of probably running out of time a little bit.
I would just flick over those, Sarah, and we'll send them as part of the slide deck, if that's okay.
I have put in the link at the end of this presentation, the link to our reconnection guide, if anybody's interested in having a look at all the information that we put in there as well. So I'll just skip over those.
Great, so that's back to me now. Thanks for that, Sarah. And yeah, so the last slide, and again, I say we'll send everybody the link, has got some real good signposts to some toolkits that kind of back up specifically the work that's been done in Cumbria County Council, but also some more generic toolkits around, really helping you to think about and navigate flexible working. And of course, it will be different for us depending on how senior we are and in what capacity we're in. But what I would say is, irrespective of how much clout you have in terms of decision making around working practices, there's no reason why you can't request that you trial some things in your own. You can be trailblazers for working differently. The beginning point, though, is always to look at your own working practices and, your policies and procedures. Look at that organisationally and see what's expected first. But then locally in your teams, you can, have a think about your own working practices, because the idea here is to make it all as transparent as possible and to build it into, this is the way we do things around here. We talk about flexible working and we include everybody in the team. It's not like a closed book where we just suddenly pull a policy out and say, oh dear, not sure whether we can do this. So have it as an open and really good conversation around how everybody can work together and start to create a culture around that. More specifically, and going back to those cases that we talked about before and what we know is to come, irrespective of what it says in your individual policies, these things are really important in terms of best practice. So dealing with requests promptly. This is a biggie, so I will just labour this one. You're not obliged to do the same thing for everybody. You can only deal with requests as they're received on a first come first served basis, which again might feel unfair to others in the team, but that's that's backed up by employment law around saying, okay, I can only deal with a request that I've got in front of me against a backdrop of the working conditions at that particular period of at that particular time. And I've just covered that one there about the business needs, and think creatively about, if it can't be done away somebody's asked, think about actually how you can work with the rest of the team to sort of meet people's needs around flexible working. Don't be too scared, because you can put parameters around it, and you can put a trial period or, a length of time where you can come back and review if it's not working. Always try to formalise, at least to a point, by an email where you're at in terms of people requests for flexible working against obviously what's being said in your organisation and what's expected. And this bit here is really important, because what that bit about the challenge and the problems around flexible working are because people don't feel connected or they haven't got clear goals. So that's really, really important. And just that last one there, as I come out of the slides, is around, just work with people and listen to people and try and sort of collectively come up with those, the right way of doing things that's going to suit everybody's needs. I'm going to come out of presenting now, but you'll see there, obviously, those are those further resources and those kind of connections. And we've just got a few minutes. Welcome people to flick their cameras back on. If you've got any questions or comments, then if you can pop into the chat, we'll obviously pick them up. Or if someone desperately wants to speak, perhaps pop your hand up.
Karen,
on,
I've got a question.
Okay, go for
so
it.
have you got any tips on how you could kind of try and motivate staff that are working remotely?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, I think it just goes back to that last point there, really, around, there's two things there. One is around connection. Connection's really important, and actually formalize that. So if people are working from home, make sure you formalize a touch point around, is that once a day? Is it every other day? Whatever it happens to be. And that's your holy grail. Don't deviate from that, because that's what, don't underestimate the importance of actually people still feeling connected to a team, no matter what your personality type. That's really important. But then that links really closely with goals. So the trade-off, if you like, for people working at home, and again, if you talk about this open and honestly, people will come to expect it, and that's okay, is that you are perhaps put more rigor around, what's expected of you on a week-to-week basis in terms of the outputs. So, and that's, to me, is a more than fair trade-off, but that helps motivate people. And whereas you might do that more organically in the workplace, you've got to work a bit harder to do that when people are working disparately or remotely at home, or agile working or whatever.
We've had another question come up in the chat box, Karen. Have the new ways of working had an impact on sickness rates at the councils? Probably a question more for Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Susan. I think it's probably too early to say at this point in time. Sickness rates are monitored all the time. It's quite a big area of work for us in the council. I think it's too early to say at the moment whether our new ways of working have actually impacted on it, but it is something that we are monitoring closely.
So we are now at 1 o'clock. So I'd just like to say thank you ever so much, everybody, for attending this Lunch and Learn session. We do have another session coming up on the 12th of November. The title for that one is We Need to Talk About Climate Change. So please come along to that session and share the word about these. Thank you ever so much, everybody.